mother says, and I hope she'll always find a place for me in her nightmares. I had a tall, dark friend. She left 2 men dead, in a single bed. No. Do we still love the boy she loved way back in summer when?
Jordan Gray, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Peter Cook, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Start me at the beginning with birth and the first 26 years from Essex.
I don't remember much about the day itself. I hear it was quite traumatic and tumultuous. I was born in Horndon on the Hill. I lived there for a little while. My parents owned a sweet shop, so that's responsible. I have so many fill-ins. I'll lean back and you can see in the camera. I have them all up here, and I swear that I just lived off sweets for the first few years of my life. That said, they fed me a lot of organic baby food, so I'm about this much taller than my younger brother. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. We moved around Essex a lot. I basically wound up in Tilbury Town for a long time, the estuary town. I went to school and college around Essex. It's a great place to be. There's a lot of character, but Thurrock itself, Thurrock, Essex, there's not a lot of hope flying about. It's a difficult place to get bolstered up to do anything.
You do realise you're just eliminating yourself as an ambassador for Thurrock,
Sure.
but I'll go with it.
Yeah.
So keep going.
I like it. I do a lot for them, and I will always champion them as well, but it is a hard place to be. Maybe until recently, the creative sector, there wasn't really a lot going on there. There was little bits bubbling under here and there. We lived in a pub called the Alsip Cock Tavern, which it's an Indian restaurant now, I think. I've not been there for a little while. But I hear there's a floor-to-ceiling fish tank, so I'm going to go back and be like, that used to be my bedroom.
And in your base for performance, I mean, a lot of it is in and around Essex, and you know, we met about a year or so ago in a dungeon in Kent, underneath a castle.
That sounds a little, yeah, well, maybe we'll clarify
underneath
that
a castle.
Yes, it was an upmarket dungeon.
An upmarket dungeon. But I mean, you play regularly in venues around Essex, or you have done, and there's some beautiful places around Essex that people don't know about, and Las Iguanas I've grown very fond of.
Yeah, it's the only one in the chain that's got its own purpose-built music venue, and I've been playing there for a few years now, Las Iguanas. There is a lot of Essex. It's got this beautiful green belt around it, and there are great venues dotted in there. That's really, really nice. And Kent, obviously, is wonderful just across the water. There's a lot of places there as well. Yeah.
So, around the age of 15, 16, you started playing the piano, didn't you?
I was very unwell for a good 2 years of my life, and I had to come out of education, and a kind of family well-wisher brought me one of those Toys R Us keyboards, battery-powered things. That's all I had to work with, and I suppose I taught myself, never had a pedal, so only until recently I've learned to use a pedal on a piano. Taught myself the chords, and it wasn't the names of the chords, it was just what sounded happy and what sounded sad, and you can make a soundscape around that, and that's major and minor. Anyone that studies music knows that most major chords in their normal state sound happy, and minor chords sound quite sad or spooky.
But that means that you've obviously got a well-developed natural musicology in your ear. If you know the difference between major and minor, you're probably different than 90% of the people that listen to music. Would that be a fair...
I would say maybe I do take it for granted a bit. I think we have this thing in the brain, it's called the corpus callosum, highway of nerves between the two hemispheres. I can never remember which hemisphere is in charge of the logic and which is in charge of the creativity. Do you remember, left or right?
It's largely discredited, but as a handy shorthand, the left is the logic and the right the more creative.
But it's more, I think, to do with novelty-seeking ideas versus keeping things the same. That's what the brain does. It builds up a pattern of the world, and then the other half of the brain tries to, another portion of the brain tries to change those things. When you've got a highly developed corpus callosum, doing things that are creative, you are able to hold on to abstract ideas and manipulate them at the same time. And I feel like music is a lot of that. Maths is that. When you get to deep level of maths, it's just art anyway.
Music really is applied physics and maths, isn't it? I
like that. No one ever said it like that before. It is. It's applied
it
physics and mathematics.
And many people I've met through the ages who've been skilled musically are often mathematically or science inclined as well. The split of those subjects when we're 5 years old is a purely artificial one. they are not as far apart.
That's
but
amazing.
anyway,
It's a good idea.
so going on with this musicality thing, so what I really like about your music is, and this doesn't happen with classically trained people who've learned all the script, is
Sure.
you move genres around quite easily with no I was going to say care, but there's a lot of care, but you don't seem to worry about moving from boogie woogie in a dramatic song and so on, which actually casts a real shadow on the whole idea of music in a beautiful way. And I think that comes possibly out of not being restricted by music scores and training, or have you got an explanation for why you mix up so many different genres?
I think that's the great thing about music. It's a language, and you get songs in opposing genres that have the same ethos or the same feeling, and so all you're doing, maybe one of these wild medleys that I do, it might feel like it's jumping from jazz to perhaps reggae, a little bit of 90s kitsch pop stuff, but retold in the style of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. However it plays out, the colour of that song is all the same to me, I think. And if you feel like it's that same vibe.
Yeah, so the colour stays the same, but the sort of it moves from genre to genre, which I think is so skilled.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, coming back to when you sort of started this journey with music, you also have made a major transformation in terms of moving to become a transgender person. I mean, tell us the story of how that began for you, and feeling a little that you're less comfortable in your skin and wanting to make that change.
So I suspect the general consensus is that there's two kinds of transgender person. There's trans kids, and you kind of always knew they were trans. They've presented that way since they were very young. Mm-hmm. I'm a late life transitioner. I transitioned at the age of 22, 23. I'm male to female, of course, and it's difficult. It's really hard. I am lucky. I work in the creative sector, so there's almost an inherent liberalism to that kind of world. So I didn't get as much trouble as a lot of people. I'm not naive to that fact that people are curious. My career has taken off a lot since I transitioned, but then I'm more confident in myself, so I've taken bigger jumps and bigger leaps. And the only thing is that crossover, that I share the circuit with a lot of drag queens. I adore drag queens. I think they're hilarious, they're very skilled, they're amazing artists. I'm just not one. Like, I'm a transgender woman that happens to be an artist. So I didn't have a lot of hassle in the early days or any questions, because people just thought this is a performance piece. And then people soon realised that, I'm not fabulous. I mean, this is a garishly bright red suit, but this is about as fabulous as I get. And I love this. This was tailored for me on the show, as you might remember from The Voice. Yeah. This was the suit that I wore during Shake It Out. But I don't dress fabulously. I dress down, if anything, because for me it's about the music. My personality is not part of the art.
Absolutely, and that brings me to the point that, when you appear on a show like The Voice, or when anyone appears, people see 5% of the person, really. Yeah. And of course, as the show proceeds, one is moved off of one's guitar or piano onto a vocal mic, and so people actually casually viewing a flat screen see a singer. And I know that you write your own material. You play the piano beautifully for someone with no training, apparently. You have all these wonderful vocal dexterity and a wonderful performance, which we've seen on the show. I mean, has that been trained, or did that just leak out of you?
Really odd. I studied drama in school, but not as a BTEC. It was just as a subject that you take at A-level. As I say, I was very ill, so I dropped out. So I essentially had 6 months of drama training, which I enjoyed very much. I'm not a natural dancer. I was a big Michael Jackson fan growing up, so I probably did that a lot as a child. But when they got me off the piano for Shake It Out, it just felt so... it was wonderful. There was no thought to it at all. There's a go to this point, do something. Go to this point, do something. There's a lot of creative freedom. And I don't know, I felt the spirit.
So, I mean, a lot of people now go to, places like BIM to study music, drama and other arts. Do you think it's possible to be overtrained?
Absolutely, because especially what I find with people that learn piano from a young age, they haven't even necessarily heard what doesn't sound good or evokes emotion. They've heard what is correct on the page. So if you tweaked something in there, they might necessarily just play it and glaze over it, and they wouldn't feel that jolt of discordant sort of chord. And I think that applies to the whole branching arts. Yeah. If it becomes a chore, then of course you're going in the wrong direction. I
have a music tutor friend who's a PhD musician, plays in church every Sunday. He doesn't really agree with the church, but he just does the gig.
Sure.
But he finds it very hard to escape from the correct notes. And isn't that strange thing that the more training you have, in a way, you can be contained into what you do, which you're obviously not.
Yeah, just when you start to... I'm lucky that I discovered a passion for jazz as well after I'd kind of learned, or taught myself the basics, to learn what does sound discordant, but to come to enjoy that, and it's a rebellion against the notes. You know what... It's amazing how most people would be able to tell you the fifth note in a chord if you're playing them and you say what comes next. With no musical training, I think there is something amazingly inherent about colour, tone. I think it's something genetic, maybe even something beyond that, something written into the vibration of atoms and strings that resonates. I mean, I'm not a particularly spiritual person. I'm actually can consider myself a bit of an anti-theist, but I do think there is some deep science behind music and its, those chord progressions.
Yeah. So coming on to your music then, so having performed other people's music on The Voice, you have a great big canon of work. I mean, how does this process of songwriting, because you produce amazing sets of lyrics, and I've seen you perform with a couple of people from The Voice, and just even remembering the words to fit them into the song is a skill that in its own right. But I mean, how did the songs come to you?
Music first, the vowels and the placement, consonants around the vowels, and then the meaning. And that sounds quite counterintuitive because you'd think you'd want to take a meaning forward.
Subject.
But not necessarily. I suppose it depends on every song needs to have its due diligence put to it. So sometimes if like Bernie Taupin and Elton John's relationship is a wonderful one because they are fully dedicated to their individual portions. But when you're one artist, like the music and the lyrics, when you're one artist doing all of that, it's a nebulous process. So to have whatever feels inherently like the most important thing, for me the music, and then working down from there.
I wasn't supposing there was an absolute Jordan Gray method, but it's interesting that you say that. So you're saying it often starts with the music, but are there occasions when the subject forces itself?
Yeah, it will present at a time when maybe the song it's found its legs, it's got its bones, and then it's confident enough. Yeah, the subject jumps into the skeleton of the music, and then it brings it to life.
Yeah, so it's a sort of organic, iterative process in some respects. Then.
Yeah. The subject puppeteers the music, I think, all the way, and I'm just there. My fingers just happen to be attached to the strings.
And The Baffled King, I mean, you've got some fantastic variety in that. Do you want to take us through a couple of the songs and give us some indication of sort of where they came from or the meaning?
Yeah. The Baffled King is my, I suppose, 7th independent album. That's a lot of material. It's essentially, though, a greatest hits for a non-famous person because there's songs from my old records on there, remastered and re-released, and then 6 or 7 new numbers. It's very... tangibly connected to each other, the songs. There wasn't an overarching feeling for that entire album, and I like to do that normally, and that's something I need to learn to do a lot more. Songs about my time in Essex. There was a period in Essex where bands like Scouting for Girls were very popular, and the Kooks and people like that. It's that bouncy sound. There's a tune on there called More Than Mates, and that's it's just it's almost just autobiographical about some sort of
fantastic song. I've been to some of the places you mentioned, but not all of them. But I mean, I can just you can just immerse yourself being sort of in Lakeside and getting the Krispy Kreme donuts for free.
I used to.
When can I get some?
Since then, I can't remember when that song was. Probably refers to about 2005, 2006. Since then, everyone seems to have migrated away from there, apart from me, and I don't recognise any of the faces behind the counter anymore.
Oh well, okay.
That's a shame. What's your favourite kind of? Do you like Krispy Kreme donuts?
No, not especially.
Okay.
And my wife would probably say that I've had enough of them.
Sure.
So that's a fair point. We're going to quit on Krispy Kreme donuts, but it really centres you in that place, and it lives and breathes the whole ethos of that. I mean, there are other songs, of course, and so you have that incredibly dramatic one, Corridors. I mean, what was that really all about? Corridors
is like my baby. It's changed. The first time I ever really played it didn't have the beatbox middle 8 section to it. I played it at opening of Gaucho's restaurant at the O2, and it was a VIP. We had Muse were in attendance, Paul Weller, Wycliffe Jean.
Wow.
And I panicked because nobody was really listening, and I think it might have been the too much reverb going on. So I made this sound, and I knew I was going into a beatbox, but I was testing to see if it was going to work, and it worked. So once you start, you have to keep going, and thus was born this And then when you put in sounds, my favourite thing to do is to take, say, Johnny Cash and Michael Jackson, two very different voices, and to mash them in without the use of a computer.
Do you want to give us a piece of that?
Sure, little improvisey kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know where it comes from.
You don't want to be in the way when my laser goes off. There's a snake in my poo. It's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
Yeah, cool.
Marvelous.
I'll tell you how to do Johnny Cash. It's very low, of course, and I am a transgender woman. Most people are aware of that fact, so I do have that resonance in my chest area. I can go very low. But for Johnny, you end every line by lifting your neck. So it's... because you're mine, I walk the line. And that's how you get Johnny Cash.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I've been most jealous of all my life, is being added an accent or anything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think people have methods like they do things. But you actually just demonstrated a bit of a method there, but the method wouldn't necessarily
It might not translate,
be enough
yeah.
for me, so I'm not going to even attempt that. Coming forward now to things you're hoping to do, I mean, The Voice, for example, was a fantastic experience, but we'll come back to that. But I mean, it's given you a platform to do much more of what you really want to do, which is your own material. So what are you now doing sort of with your own material?
Absolutely. Well, I feel like I've been playing the long game, very much in like a David Bowie sense. I wrote songs... I write one song, maybe in a certain genre, and then directly oppose that with the next one on purpose, maybe even just to try and prove myself and prove my worth and skill. But that's a very difficult game to play, because if someone doesn't like dark country, or they do like dark country, they're not going to love jazz fusion, the very next track down on the album. So I've kind of had to try and find a road. At first it was quite restrictive, but now I realise that it's quite freeing. When you find a sound that people enjoy, it's much more comfortable and you can add more meaning. So we're deciding on that. We've had some great meetings with Paloma, setting me up with some great songwriters from around the world. I'm going to decide what works and move forward with that. I'm also working on a lot of spoken word stuff. I was very fortunate to have met one of my personal heroes, Scroobius Pip. He's a spoken word artist, actor, activist, podcaster and everything from Stamford-le-Hope, which is one town over from where I used to live in Tilbury. And as a homage to him, I kind of brought out this spoken word stuff that went viral. So he got me on his show, Distraction Pieces, and we had a little chat. And so I'm going to be pursuing that as a sideline project as well.
Because you've got a couple of books on Amazon, haven't you? Or one at least now that's available.
Yeah, I suppose spoken word is... I love language, so it was a natural progression from there. I've released 2 novellas, and I'm hoping to maybe bring out another 2 simultaneously by the end of this year, because I started writing one, got 2/3 of the way through and changed my mind and started writing something else, and now I'm finishing them both at the same time.
So you've got sort of multiple projects, just some of them in the back room and some coming out, and not necessarily in a particular order when they feel
exactly
appropriate.
It's not a healthy way to live your life, because it's like you're jumping over projects all the time, but it feels sincere. It's coming out when it should come out, and it works. If I put enough effort into everything, eventually it'll all be out there for people to see.
You're absolutely right about the David Bowie, and I'll add on Prince, because I
Absolutely.
have to, thing here about sort of doing opposing works and not ever staying the same. I think Prince used to put on the tickets, expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Because if you jump genres, there are some people absolutely love that, and other people find it hard to take, aren't they? So
Yeah, they can't invest emotionally if it's
Yeah.
going to go...
And I've often made the point, although I love U2, that they've only made 3 records because they're the same song.
Right.
And so I'll get slapped in a minute for that. But I mean, the truly transcendent artists manage to do these different things and take their audiences with them and manage their expectations in some way. I mean, have you got any? You're sort of saying you're trying to find a.
It was
a theme, or you didn't say that.
Yeah, sonically, almost like the sound needs to be something that from beginning to the end of the album, you can have up faster songs, slower songs with slightly different flavours, but the overarching sort of sonic, maybe a wildcard song, maybe one song on the album. What's Gnome, Space Gnome, that Bowie's one, just something that is completely off the wall and then you come back to it. It's something that Paloma taught me. It's really important. She said, I love your music, I love you. She listened to my original music. She said, I absolutely adore it. It's just, it gets to this point all the time and then it's almost self-sabotage because I never want a song to just be a straight ballad. I need to put something else in there, some jazz flourish or some ridiculous impression. And I'm not entirely sure why I do that.
So that's where the music business will step in if you allow it, or if you say I want to be me. But I mean that's a refinement of perhaps not narrowing the bandwidth, but in fact making the songs carry right through to the end is something you're considering now, is it, through Paloma?
I think so, maybe just to honour for the first few releases, because the thing is it's a skill in and of itself. I mean, if I haven't done it yet, and yet I make music all the time, I suppose it stands to reason that it's not the easiest thing to do. They say anyone can write a pop song. It's not as easy as people think, I guess.
No, it's a different skill to writing a long one, isn't it? I mean, Lady Gaga's managed that expectation when she did the Tony Bennett stuff.
Yeah,
Say,
that was incredible.
sorry, this is jazz guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's about sort of preparing people some of the time, isn't it? So you can have this width and variety, but you have to let people know somehow what to expect.
Or perhaps by adopting a character. Maybe a lot of people, they change it up. Difficult for me there is that I've made this transition in the public eye from male to female, so I don't want my life and everything that I've done and all that work I put into then be just viewed as an art piece. So it's a complicated thing to do with your life, but I'm enjoying myself. Yeah.
So The Voice, take us through the experience of that, if you, in however you want to.
Yeah, well.
Nobody feels any pain. Why don't hurt? I'm gonna let it happen. Shake it out, shake it out, shake it out, shake it. Hey baby, give me just one look. You can't start a fire. Running around, crying over a broken heart. This gun's behind. We're living if we're just dancing in the dark. You can't start a fire. Worrying about millions of world falling. If we're just dancing in the dark. Little
It was wonderful. It was the best thing I've done with my life. It's the only show for me, and I'll say this on record, that has the integrity, in my eyes, the integrity to have their first ever transgender contestant and deal with it so wonderfully. So I felt very cared for, very, looked after. Creatively, a lot of control. I made some amazing friends. I didn't get a turn at the first stage. I did this Just Like a Woman by Bob Dylan. My idea, which I appreciate, also sounds a bit what's the word I'm looking for? A bit coy, maybe.
Twee.
Yeah, a bit twee. Because of the nature of the lyrics. But I was trying to reappropriate that song as a trans anthem. Seems like I make everything...
You did.
Oh, thank you. I think
did
it's
genuinely.
Yeah.
I use the word twee because I also saw some of the naysayers finding good reasons to say, oh well, which is just happens with all
Sure.
art forms. But I thought it was actually a superb performance.
Thank you.
And epitomised what you were trying to bring. But they didn't turn, did they?
No turns. But I saw what I felt like I saw genuine remorse from a couple of them.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I got the call, and I was back straight in with This Woman's Work by Kate Bush, with Theo Llewellyn, my battle partner on Team Paloma. And a highlight for me, absolutely a highlight for a lot of people, I think. A lot of people got really emotionally invested in that song.
Oh, beautiful
The
song.
producer told me, she said it was a
And
highlight.
Kate Bush, another artist that defies being categorised
Absolutely.
as well.
And she passed on to Paloma that she really enjoyed it as well.
Oh,
so I was really chuffed with that,
superb.
yeah.
And
So we carried... Yeah, I'd like to meet her myself one day, perhaps. Florence, as well, of Shake It Out fame, Florence of the Machine, passed on her, thumbs up. Ricky Ross of Deacon Blue was my next song. I did, what did I sing? Real Gone Kid. And kind of, for me, speaking to the disenfranchised people of the world. It stopped being about gender after This Woman's Work.
Yeah.
It was about songwriting. I wanted to do big numbers. And it went well, and I made it to the live shows. A lot of pressure. I think I developed this... I thought I had sleep apnea for a while because I just couldn't breathe. And it's just pressure, I think. When you're wide awake in the middle of the day and you can't breathe, it's not sleep apnea, is it? It's something else. Which persists to this day.
have you any tips for people about coping with pressure?
To not take yourself too seriously, but to still give 100%. And that seems like a counterintuitive thing. You need to... I think it's okay to burn out if you're doing something that you love, but then that's not good health and safety advice, really. Eat, sleep, drink lots of water. I've not had an alcoholic drink for 2.5 years, and I have no intention of starting again. It's not good for you. But as a general rule, don't take anything too personally, and enjoy your work.
Yeah. And the pinnacle for me of the voice was the one with the flowers, which is why you're sitting here with this.
Yeah.
What a beautiful piece. I mean, what prompted the decision to do that song?
So it's a lot of creative freedom on that show. We were deciding on whether or not I should be in front or outside of the keyboard, and it was Paloma's decision to bring me out, and she pitched this song to me. So they pitched a lot, really, and it was my decision, inevitably, that this was the one that was going to work. And then I found out she had this whole staging in her mind with the roses and everything ready to go, so that's fantastic.
So, of course, music is, on television, is a multi-layered experience. You've got the music, of course, the person producing it, and then the performance, and everything else. And Shake It Out, I think, was just such a knockout performance.
Thank you. Again, I've been so fortunate. I think my story and the songs that they've chosen, the songs that we've chosen together, have really stuck in people's imaginations. And Shake It Out, for a lot of people, they remember this. They remember the jumping around.
Yeah, everyone I've shown it to, why didn't we see that? Because you don't watch The Voice. With all the reasons why people say that sort of thing. The Bruce Springsteen number, was that prompted by Bruce's sort of absolute stand on transgender issues, or was it a different decision?
It was. It's just amazing coincidence. I got a message from Paloma afterwards saying, "Do you think that your performance had anything to do with Bruce's decision?" I said, "I doubt. I think there was many more factors to consider than my performance of his song in the show." Very proud of him for what he did. He started something amazing there as well.
Yeah, I mean, in a purely stereotypical, for the sake of humour way, I see Bruce Springsteen as a truck driving, Yorkie eating guy from America, who then says, "I'm not playing a concert, a festival, because they haven't sorted out this business of transgender access to all the usual facilities."
Yeah.
That's a big decision for someone like that. I mean, it disappoints a lot of people. So it seemed like a principled decision on his part.
Yeah, it's no coincidence, I think, that the people that align themselves with music and the creative arts also align themselves with a liberal attitude. Obviously, left-leaning people tend to be... This is a huge leap to say this is a generalisation, but musical people tend to be left-leaning. And
we'll just capture that.
Yeah, and it's
test it later on.
I'll say it on record. It's fine with me. I'm left-leaning without even really knowing why. I'm not a political person.
No.
But and so when something is inherently feels wrong, it tends to pop up with the left-leaning people first.
But there is huge pressure on someone saying that, because there's a whole machine behind them saying the show must go on.
Especially for someone
which,
like Bruce.
Makes it harder. Even if Bruce Springsteen is sort of a megastar, he's still got huge pressure, I imagine, to continue with that show. So it isn't just on him, unless he stands on a principle, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a small demographic of society as well.
So
obviously.
the world is turning a little bit in a good way.
The times they are changing. I think
are.
so. Yeah, it's wonderful.
So, hopes, dreams, wishes, and anything else that you want to tell us about.
I am moving into the realm of more television. I've had this discussion with various management teams that it's very difficult. People won't accept a presenter musician. It just doesn't tend to happen. You get people that have done one and move into the other after a long time. But I love it. I love improvising live. I love dealing with all these last-minute contingencies and things. I think my personality has come out since I transitioned, and everything now feels so natural. People wanting to talk to me, and people, pitching all these crazy ideas. I'm like, yes, let's just do everything. I can't remember the last time I properly slept. We've just been doing shoots and interviews and touring up and down the country. I want to be a part of that world. I think television's very important. So moving into that world, I'm appearing on your terrestrial TVs a little bit more later this year. Touring around, doing a lot of interviews and trans-themed stuff, LGBT-themed stuff. So that's cool. I'd like to release my next novel very soon. I can't stop, really. I don't have it in me to stop. It feels knackering to stop. Maybe because I've got this momentum going.
No, but there's real energy and drive, which is apparent from the very first time I met you. I had to suffer the indignity of going on after you, I seem to remember.
I enjoyed your set very much. We still got your CD in the car.
That's very gracious, but it's not really too important. But that was I thought, who is this person? Way back then. And I thought, what are we doing in Rochester underneath the castle? And you're here. That was such a great thing.
Intimate gigs for me, there's something very special. It's obviously about communicating with people. People deserve to be entertained. Have this thing in our brain, again, I'll draw it back to that, these mirror neurons. When you see someone smile, you smile. When you see someone yawn, you yawn. It's all inherent. So when you're that close to someone and you're giving 100%, I think you bring something out in them. You give the other people the ability to shine if you shine as bright as you possibly can.
So, from Las Iguanas to Las Vegas.
I like that. And it's not far off. I've got a meeting later as well about the potential for American stuff,
From Hollywood to Lordswood in Chatham.
Very good. Yes.
Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Peter. Bless you.